can go.
Do you want to what?
Okay, near San Isidro, New Mexico, there's a turnoff that leads out into the desert, and we didn't know how far to go until we saw the goblins, and this told us that we were headed in the right direction. This is the type of geology that occurs in that area, but what we were looking for was a specific hill that looked like this. The hill on the left is Jurassic deposits, and the arroyo at the bottom of the hill is where the dinosaur fossils were. Eventually, DJ and Marcus uncovered on the other side of the arroyo the bone that led to finding this, which is what I found when I was 16 or 17 years old. These are dinosaur rib bones. They're on the other side of the arroyo from where DJ and Marcus found this, which these are two of the vertebrae from the backbone of the dinosaur. This is the headquarters tent, which was set up and never used. And this is the trailer, which was also set up, and that's where I lived for the duration of the site of the dig. We brought in a backhoe, and this is to clear off all of the rocks above the layer of rock that has the dinosaur bones in it. So that's called the overburden. So this is taking off the overburden while I'm trying to make sure that the operator doesn't go too deep and cut into the bones. This is the first time we actually got down to the bones in some of the area and started looking to see what we were uncovering. That guy in the red in the middle is DJ's grandfather. As soon as we knew that we were getting a lot of stuff, people came in from the newspapers and interviewed. That guy in the middle in the blue is DJ's father. And the people really started pouring in. The newspaper people, and also these are members of the Paleontological Study Group in New Mexico before there was a New Mexico Museum of Natural History. They were trying to use this site to encourage funding for a natural history museum. This is the two chief paleontologists on the site trying to figure out what the heck they're looking at. In case you don't know, the one in yellow is DJ and the other one is Marcus. Okay, that large bone that's next to DJ's head is the one that he uncovered with his rear end sliding down the side of the arroyo. And the rest of the bones are a couple more vertebrae and then a rib that he's pointing at. Here they are working on the other side of the arroyo on the ribs over there. I think this goes without saying what this is. But those tools in their hand, brushes, are very important tools. You'd think digging out rocks requires a pick, but it requires some pretty delicate instruments. This is I don't know what this is. I don't think anybody ever figured out what this is. This is what it looks like when you're uncovering the bones. Sometimes you can't really see a lot of difference between the rock that's surrounding them and the bones themselves. This is a vertebra from the tail of the dinosaur. These are teeth that Marcia found that she's holding in her hands. For some reason, the teeth disappeared from the office where they were being stored. So we do have one cast of one. Actually, we have two casts of the teeth. Working on the site, there is some heavy work that has to happen. There are a lot of volunteers came in to help. Most of these people are senior citizens from the Rockhounds Club. There was one guy who was 94 years old, and he said, this makes him feel very young working on something that's 145 million years old. And we had the peanut gallery on the sides of the arroyo watching what we were uncovering. This is what was uncovered on one side of the arroyo, where the bone up on the right-hand corner up there is the one that DJ and Marcus found sliding down the hill, and the bone on the very left side of the screen is part of the hip bone structure of the dinosaur. So most of what you're looking at, anything that's round, is a vertebra from the backbone, and so the long things that you see are rib bones. This is the other side of the arroyo, the side where I originally found the rib bones that led me to the site. Once the bones are uncovered and we get enough of them laid out in front of us, we need to map them. And so we stretched up these coordinates. The string is to give us a north-south axis, the white string, and the reds are gridding the site off so that then the bones could be mapped. And this is the bone on the left, that's so kind of an L shape, is a very nice rib bone. A single rib would be about 8 feet long. There's the same rib bone. That's called the rib head, or attaches to the backbone. So now we're looking at the whole site again, and you can see on the left that part of the hip bone has been covered up with plaster, and I'll show you a little bit more detail on that. These people are beginning to prepare the bones for plastering. You can see on the right-hand side there's another bone that's been plastered. These bones are very porous and they absorb moisture. So the first thing you have to do is cover them in aluminum foil to prevent the moisture from coming through into the fossil material itself, and then cover that with burlap and cover that with plaster of Paris. Sometimes it's even necessary to add in a splint and then plaster over that to give the chunk of rock you're going to remove a lot more strength. You can see that we've isolated various sections. So we've tried to cut the sections down into small enough areas that they didn't weigh so much that we couldn't actually lift them out. But once the plaster is completely hardened, the bone can be pried off and turned over. And that's what this is. So the bottom side is now the top side. But that's completely open. But the cast below is what holds it together so that we can take it back to the laboratory. And this is lifting the bone out and heading up to the pickup truck. And this bone is ready to go back to the laboratory. Once in the laboratory, there were additional volunteers that started to take off the rest of the rock that was encasing the bone. Notice that it's still in the case because that gives it the strength it needs to hold together while they're doing this. The glossy reflection you see is because we're using various types of gels to harden up and solidify all these cracked little pieces of bone. This is one of the vertebrae. This is another vertebra. And this one is from the tail. It has just a single zygopophyse on the left-hand side that sticks up where the top of the tail would have been. This is a bone from the dorsal side, the back side of the dinosaur. It's another vertebra. And here's yet another vertebra. And you can see these arms that reach out are called zygopophyses, and they are what the ribs attach to. Here's another. Every backbone is just a little. I mean, every vertebra is a little bit different from the vertebra either before it or after it. This is one of my two favorite vertebrae. This is, I think it's the 8th vertebra back in the background. The 8th meaning back from what we'd consider the shoulder. And this is the 4th vertebra, and we'll see a series of shots. This one, I did the reconstruction on this, and you can see that there's a lot of plaster that's had to be put in place where fragments were either missing or too delicate to put together. So I'm going to show you some different directions of this. Is what would be towards the tail. This is that same side. And those two little bones that stick out in the middle of them, they actually hook like kind of like a lock into the next vertebra. And we'll see when we get this turned around. On the front of it, there's a little key thing that would fit into the vertebra in front of it. So we're turning it around. You can begin to see that little key thing sticking out on the left-hand side about in the middle. And then we'll come to a full view. And you can see that one arm of the zygopophyses was too destroyed to be able to preserve. Right in the middle of the frame is that little key piece that sticks forward and locks into the next vertebra in the row. This is the rib bone that we were looking at. This is the rib head. And then the other fragments of the rib are on the left. These are drawings that I made after doing as much reconstruction as we could on the various vertebrae. And then I compared these drawings to drawings that were in various books. This is just sort of the dinosaur family tree through time. And the dinosaur we're looking at is in the middle on the right-hand side. It's the long one that looks like what used to be called a brontosaurus and then became called an apatosaurus. And the one that we found looks approximately the same, but it's called a camarasaurus. The fossil, or the dinosaur at the bottom, is Coelophysis, which is actually the New Mexico state fossil. And that was found up at Ghost Ranch, New Mexico. This is just a reconstruction of supposedly what the scenery was like back then. It was a lot warmer. It may not have had as much water as this indicates. There was a lot of theory going around early on in paleontology that because of the size of these creatures, they couldn't really walk on ground. They had to walk in swamps where the water held up their bodies. They no longer believe that. There was a lot of swamps around because they did eat a lot of that type of food based on the shape of their teeth. And also the coprolites, which is fossilized shit. And in the shit there was evidence of marine life, of clams and snails and things like that. This is the head of a Camarasaurus. It's not the one that we found. We didn't find anything from the head. They call it Camarasaurus. Camera means open space, basically. And so there's really no skull there. It's all open space inside the skull. These are some of the books that were used to go through and determine what type of dinosaur it was. Cope and Marsh's dinosaurs, they were famous dinosaur hunters from the 1800s. they tended to steal each other's dinosaurs. And they also tended to, one person would excavate a dinosaur, put it in boxes, get it to the train, and the other guy would go in there and relabel the address where the dinosaur was supposed to go so that he got it at his place instead of where it was supposed to go. This is an over estimation of the bones that we got, and it seems to show that there's a piece of the skull that was found. This was, I think, not true. I think it was more for publicity than for anything else. And this is the result of the excavation, the book that you may or may not have in your hand to read. And it's a true story, and there's our heroes right there. I've got a few more pictures. This is sunset out at the dinosaur site where I had to spend my time protecting the dinosaur from potential looters who never showed up, but more often from rainstorms, and I had to go down and cover the bones with great sheets of plastic to keep them from getting wet and breaking down even further. And that's just a sunset. The rest of the pictures, there's a few pictures I have. Well, obviously it's still sunset. This is just a layer of rock, and there are a lot of little tiny footprints in this layer of rock. They're really not definable, but there were a lot of places out there that had interesting formations like this. Oh, I didn't know this was in here. This is a building that was in Austin, Texas. I have no idea if that building still exists. And the reason I put it in here was to ask DJ, does this building still exist?
I recognize the church on the left, but I don't actually recognize the building on the right.
Okay.
But it might still exist.
This is DJ's daddy, almost naked on the right-hand side.
The person who is currently speaking is DJ.
And I think Marcus in the middle is drinking from a Coors can. And DJ is working with his nose or his thumb, I don't know which. And that's DJ. This was before the dinosaur, by the way. And that's Daddy and Marcus and DJ again. And that's Marcia and then Marcus on his trike. Oh, Marcia's got the Coors can. This is up in the Jemez Mountains. It's a place near Battleship Rock where we used to all go to collect fossils on the side of the hill across from Battleship Rock. And the Johnstone family used to go there when the kids were going, the little kids, meaning me and my sisters and my little brother were very, very young. And even my older brothers were there at one time or another. That's Margie. That's Margie and her horse. That's Margie and her horse.
Margie is, Will Johnstone is talking right now. This is DJ, by the way. Margie is Will Johnstone's sister, and DJ's aunt.
And I thought this was a goat, but I think it's a dog. And that's DJ's grandmother, my mother. And that's one of my mother's paintings that she made when living in San Miguel, Mexico. And it's a market. And this is her painting of a streetway in San Miguel with the cathedral in the background. And this is some of DJ's father's jewelry made back in mid-1970s. Oh, this is Marcia's butterfly tiles in the kitchen cabinetry and Will's mural on the wall in the house that Marcia and Will and Don and B, DJ's grandmother and grandfather, built on Rio Grande Boulevard with their own hands out of adobe. Yeah, okay. I just put this in because I was looking through old slides and I found a box from World War II or World War I or sometime in between that was from the USO, that was all these songs that they project on the board for people to sing. And obviously, I don't know how to pronounce those words backwards like that.
The bells of St. Mary.
Yeah, but anyway, that was just to see
Yeah.
what they look like. I think that's it.
Great.
Thank you.